Morning, everyone. Well, as Jeff pointed out, we're representatives from the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, and really appreciate the ability and the opportunity to come out and address this, the ABC and the memberships here. We recognize fully that you guys have a tremendous burden of responsibility with regard to regulating sports and keeping athletes safe and healthy as they compete. And that we recognize too that extends well beyond anti-doping. So really appreciate the ability to come up here and talk with you about how we want to support your programs. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then Onye will go through our presentation. But I'm Andy Morrison. I'm the Director of Sport Testing and Resources at the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency. This is actually my last week at USADA, so you probably won't see my face at the next ABC meeting, but it has been a privilege to be at 3 of these meetings, including this one. My current role at USADA is working with sports organizations, event organizers, sport groups outside of the Olympic movement, and putting together anti-doping programs for them. One of those sports is professional boxing, which you'll hear more about our involvement in that specifically in our presentation. But again, just wanted to thank everybody for welcoming us here, and I look forward to maybe talking through our position and answering your questions.
Yeah, and I'd just like to echo Andy's comments, and thanks for the opportunity to come and speak with everyone. My name is Gabe Beta. I'm the Director of UFC operations at USADA. I've been tasked with basically running our UFC anti-doping program. Work very closely with the UFC, specifically Jeff, over the last year on rolling this program out and getting in front of as many athletes as we could to educate them on all the rules, processes, and procedures of this anti-doping program. And now that we're in a position where we're fully implemented and testing regularly, really maintaining our testing program and making sure that we continue to learn and grow within our testing program.
Thanks, Gabe and Andy. So my name is Onye Kwalker. I'm the Legal Affairs Director for USADA. Been in that role now for 4.5 years. It's gone by pretty quickly. So the first 3.5 years I was at USADA was exclusively on the Olympic side, or I should say 95% on the Olympic side. With the UFC coming on board last year, I'm now almost exclusively on the combat sports side, and so in shifting over into that position, had the opportunity to speak with many of you in person or on the phone, and as my colleagues said, just very pleased to have this opportunity to address the body this morning. So, I guess what I'll start with is pointing out that we're not here to sell anything. We're here to have a conversation with you all, in some cases continue a conversation that has been going on for several years. That certainly is the case with my friend Bob over there from here in Nevada, and Andy Foster from California, the folks from New York. We've been working with a lot of these organizations, or a lot of commissions, going back to 2010, 2011, but that number has increased quite a bit over the last several years. And we, as Andy said, we appreciate that the commissions rather. I think that there's that there's an area that we overlap quite a bit, and the commissions I know feel very strongly about protecting the health and safety of the athletes that they license to fight in their various jurisdictions. And from the commission's perspective, that's a very broad endeavor. You're looking at pre-fight medicals, post-fight medicals. You're looking to see what athletes have done with their fight history, weight management, hydration, which Andy Foster, I know has been pushing for very strongly, which the UFC has taken a great leadership role in as well. And of course, there's anti-doping. Now, what we do is much more narrow. We're just focused on that anti-doping, and because of that, because there is that level of overlap, we think that it's very important just to make sure that we are doing everything that we can for our clients, that we continue to have these conversations with you all so that we know exactly what it is that you all need from us, and so that we can figure out a way to get you the information that you need. And so I'll just briefly start with an overview of the programs that we have in combat sport, and then I'm sure there will be some questions, so wanted to leave some time for that as well, just to make sure that, again, we know what's important to this membership so that we can take the necessary steps to ensure that you all have the information that you need, and so that we're actually supporting you all and acting as partners with your programs, your respective programs. And so I'll start with the year-round testing programs that we conduct. So obviously USADA has been involved in anti-doping on the Olympic side since our inception back in 2000, so now going on 16 years. And in the last year with the UFC. And I think to label these just testing programs is a little bit narrow. These should be seen as comprehensive anti-doping programs in which, we're educating athletes, we're conducting research, we're collecting samples, we're sending those to the labs, we're communicating with the labs. When we get those results, we're exercising results management, which means we are contacting the athletes, their representatives, if there's a positive test, and we're actually adjudicating those matters as well. So those are so those are the programs where it's from start to finish, we're involved in it. But over the last several years, we've also had the opportunity to engage in what we refer to as, I guess, enhanced testing programs. And basically, when we put together a year-round program or one of these enhanced testing programs, there are a set of guidelines or criteria that we must follow. And, those are unified rules amongst anti-doping organizations which are accredited by, or not accredited, but that are signatories to the WADA code. And we don't need to necessarily go into that, but into the specifics of that, other than to say that these guidelines have been devised and updated over time to represent what the global anti-doping community considers to be just best practices, from the collection of samples through the analysis of samples, and then how you actually deal with samples when they're reported as positive. So we need to adhere to that. And what we communicate to our clients or potential clients is, well, we're happy to work with you, but there's a set, there's some guidelines that we need to follow that we cannot deviate from. And if they say that they're able to do that, then we're happy to conduct a program for them. So we're not playing any favorites. We're excited about being a part of or being able to assist organizations, commissions, international federations, whatever it might be, in carrying out their goals of protecting the health and safety of athletes. And so if someone comes to us and is serious about doing that, then we're serious about helping them. I'd say one of the most important guidelines or global standards is the WADA prohibited list. And so every program we conduct, this is the prohibited list that we're using. And I know that there are several commissions here today that have adopted the full WADA prohibited list, which is great, because when we go and conduct a program in that jurisdiction, it's very easy for the athletes to know exactly what they can and cannot do. And so that's something that we're always pushing for. And then on top of it, and this slide probably looks familiar, although without the animation, I don't know how to do that part of it, but Jeff threw this up before, and this just speaks to our ability to be able to conduct these programs by, we're not just testing in the United States. We're testing all around the world, because oftentimes the athletes that we've been asked to enroll in our testing programs are based outside of the United States. So Brazil, Argentina, China, all over Asia, Europe, pretty much every continent except for Antarctica. We have the capability to. We probably could do Antarctica. We haven't yet. But yeah, I mean, and this is a big deal. And the reason why we're able to tap into this is because we are, a signatory to the WADA Code. So we reach out to our other WADA Code partners in order to facilitate this drug testing, so we can get these athletes wherever they may be. So specifically to this audience, this just kind of touches on, we've collaborated with approaching 20 different athletic commissions on anti-doping programs. And so that's where we've gone into their jurisdiction where an event is being held, whether that's in professional boxing or the UFC, and we've conducted testing in that jurisdiction. And I can say that, it's been an evolving process. The way we were conducting tests, I would say back in 2012 when I first came on board, was a little bit haphazard. There was some lack of communication, I would say, or we weren't communicating as well as I would have liked with certain commissions. And I can tell you that through carrying out multiple programs in some of these states. I mean, Nevada, it just seems we're here every month, just about. And California, we've been there numerous times. Same with New York. And communicating with these commissions, we're able to conduct programs that we feel are, where we're not duplicating efforts with respect to collecting samples on fight night. Where the commissions oftentimes are used to doing that. If they're comfortable with us conducting that testing, we're happy to do so, and we're happy to share the results with them. And that's proven to be, it certainly, I think, makes things easier as far as process, but at the end of the day, it makes it easier for the athletes as well, which is what's important to us. And then outside of the United States, we've also collaborated on programs with commissions in Canada, Brazil. Cab MMA is here in the room, and they've been a fantastic partner just over the last year or so. Programs in Australia, Ireland, the United Kingdom, what is that, Japan, Philippines coming up. I'm not great at geography, but basically we go wherever we need to go in order to carry out these programs, and we're always willing to work with the commissions in whatever way we can to make sure that the information that we're generating through these programs can be provided to them in a useful manner. And so I think that's the last slide. And so that's just kind of a brief overview of our program in combat sport. And the one thing that I really want to stress is that we are here because we want to work collaboratively with the commissions. We generate a lot of information in the course of conducting these anti-doping programs. And so we welcome feedback from the commissions. Anytime there is a bout that is going to take place in a jurisdiction, what we'll do is we'll reach out as far in advance as possible. Usually that's around 6 to 8 weeks before that event's actually taking place. And I'm sure there's some folks here in the office or here in this ballroom who have been on the phone with me and had that conversation about, just want to introduce myself. I work for USADA. There's a boxing match or there's a UFC card that's going to be held in your jurisdiction. Here's how we conduct our anti-doping program. Interested to know how you all conduct yours, and what do you want us to do? How do you want to handle this when we get there? And I found every one of those conversations to be extremely helpful in just ensuring that there's no confusion at all when we show up and start to conduct that testing, and that things go very smoothly. And I would have to say that in the last year where those opportunities have come up more and more frequently with the UFC, that every one of those calls has gone very well. And I feel that all of the programs have gone very well. And so so basically that's my way of saying, let us know what you need, let us know how you want it, and we'll do what we can to get you that information. And so certainly understanding that we went through this pretty quickly, wanted to allow for some time for any questions that you all might have or any comments that you might have about how about what you are looking for from USADA and how we can get that information to you. Yes, sir.
I have one quick two-part question. Maybe the answer won't be so quick, but I think it probably will be. In the past, there have been issues with USADA, and I'm not talking about last year, I'm talking about in years past, with A, contracts which did not require transmission of results to local commissions, and B, untimely reporting to local commissions. Currently, do you have any contracts which don't require that you immediately report test negatives, or excuse me, positives to local commissions?
So, Mr. English, I just want to make sure I'm addressing your questions accurately. Is there a specific time frame that you're referring to, or a specific incident?
Oh, there's lots of instances. I've seen your old contracts.
Okay.
So, but they are old contracts. They're not current contracts. Some old contracts.
Well, I guess there's two. So you're saying the contracts.
That's then, and this is now.
And then you're saying untimely.
Let's just focus on where.
Yeah, but then you also said untimely reporting of results.
Yes, which I can explain. You'll understand it. I didn't want to get into technical. There are other, particularly outside the United States, where reports don't get disseminated until the B sample is tested. So that's why I referenced the A sample and timely reporting. There was an issue in the United States with USADA, and I looked it up for another reason 12 years ago, so it's not current, where there was an issue. So there's no point in rehashing something that happened 12 years ago.
Okay.
I'm interested in your policies and your contracts now.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to make sure you weren't referring to any sort of situation where we didn't report information in a timely manner to a commission, because I would say that absolutely has not happened.
Oh, it did happen, but that was 12 years ago, as I said.
Okay.
Let it pass. That's then.
Okay. Well,
I can tell you why it happened, and it's not important for this meeting.
Well, we weren't doing testing 12 years ago.
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm confused about it.
Eric Morales.
12 years ago?
Yeah.
Eric Morales?
2004.
We didn't do any boxing programs in 2000.
You did. Excuse me, you did. But I'm not going to argue with you. You can look it up. But it's not important. It's important what is going on now.
Wasn't that 2012?
I thought it was 2000. Maybe it was 2012.
Okay.
But,
well,
but the important thing is what's going on now.
I'll touch on them. So
maybe I got the date wrong. You're right.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I was just confused.
Okay.
All right. So contracts that do not require reporting to local commissions. Honestly, it's been a process. It's been a process. What we did when we started doing testing in professional boxing was we took our Olympic program.
I know.
And we told the athletes, all right, well, you agree to abide by the Olympic programs, by the Olympic standards. And that's not just with regard to sample collections. That also goes to how results are managed, how they're maintained. And so in the Olympic program, information is disseminated in a very, regimented manner. There's a certain order to it. And so in drafting those initial contracts, I could say that there probably wasn't a reference to a commission, because there's no references to commissions in the WADA international standards. But what I can say is that from the earliest days, I think that the information that's most important to a commission is if an athlete tests positive. That's
right.
That's what they want to know.
Well, of course.
Yeah, and so we have always provided that information to commissions. And
well, that's not what I asked. Because I'm just trying to pin you down, and there's a reason for it.
Well,
you get a positive sample on an A test.
Okay.
How long before the local commission knows?
They'll know within 24 hours, and usually it's within a couple of hours.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
When that information comes in, and if something comes in after hours and we're not there to
that I
receive it.
understand completely.
Yeah.
I understand the process.
Yeah, and so and I believe that is addressed in our contracts, that information about positive tests will be provided to commissions, and that they could also be provided to more broadly than that to sanctioning organizations as well. Yeah. And then I would also just, I guess, push back on any allegation that we have not timely provided results to any commission in the past.
Push back on the New York Athletic Commission because they told me you did.
And we have addressed that and said that is false. And I'll say so. I'll say that again. We provided them with information in a timely manner. And I guess more broadly, if there are any concerns that USADA sits on results, I can just say right now that doesn't happen. And if you don't have to take my word for it, there are commissions here. No, I'm just saying there are commissions that we have worked with in the past who I think could also attest to that. Andy.
Onye, if I could just make a few comments, and I don't know if you're done with your presentation,
Yes.
but I thought I'd follow this up. People in the room, I want you to hear me. These people are here to help you. It's not costing you money. I swear I do not understand it. Let them come to your state, help them out, give them a room. They're part of the deal. And then use their results. If the guy's hot, they're going to let you know. This is to me, this is a no-brainer. I don't understand. I see these articles that come out, blah, blah. Look, this was years ago. This is now. And I'm glad you brought it up. This is the point I'm trying to make. These guys have advanced. They're with the program. They worked in California many, many, many times. They give me the results. I work with these guys. They're good to work, and they work with a bunch of your states. So, look, and I work with Dr. Goodman. So when you see Dr. Goodman with VADA, work with her too. Because you know what? It's free. Okay, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars last year on drug testing. But you know what? I'm saving money by having them guys come in. And I just think it's a good program. These guys will work with you. They're here to help you. They're here to educate you. They've offered to come to California. I've not took them up yet. Going to. They've offered to come to California and teach my inspectors about collection practices, this, that, and the other. I gave the specimen collection talk last year. You guys saw it. But these guys are like pros at it. So take him up. These guys are good guys. I mean, they're here to help you. I think this is probably one of the most comprehensive drug testing programs for a league in a sport. I mean, this is an impressive program. I've said enough. These guys are good guys. Meet them. They're coming to your state. Learn from them.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Andy's statement there, and part of what Onye said too is, we as a WADA code signatory, there are certain obligations that we need to adhere to as a code signatory, and that model doesn't fit for everybody. And so, as Andy said, when VADA comes in or there's other agencies that come in, it's my opinion, it's our opinion that some testing is better than none, and that anything that you can do to help athletes compete on a fair and clean, level playing field is better for the sport. And so we're, like Onye said, we're not here to kind of corner the market or monopolize this thing. Our genuine goal here is the safety and health of athletes to be able to compete on a fair and level playing field, and any enhancements that can be done to an anti-doping program to help that process is what we're going to stand behind and support. And we know that our program is not a one-size-fits-all. It really is bound by certain parameters that people need to agree to in order for us to even agree to accept that program. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I think it might be beneficial for everybody if you were to explain the testing process and the typical time it takes to get, the general time it takes to get the results as far as working days go. In fact, that you really can't have a soft period so that they have a better understanding of when the results come in or before. That's all right. Can you hear me over there?
Yeah, I mean, I sent them the letter.
I don't know. I just think it might be beneficial for those that are not familiar with the
Sure.
You know, you're not gonna get the results in 2 or 3 days. Then when your results get bad, that's when you test it. And it's usually at least 10 working days. So you cannot not test a fighter 24, 48 hours at a competition. Then they're gonna get hit to the fact that you're not testing them. And they'll find a way to put something in their system that you can edit. So you've got to, just like the Olympics, end up having somebody win a contest, and then subsequent to the contest, they're going to test positive for performance enhancing drugs. And you don't know the time frames that something around healthy people believe in. And there is a process if you want to expedite the process through the water certified lab. This is going to cost you more money, but it can be done.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bob, and I'm happy to address that. So, as Bob had mentioned, turnaround time for lab results does take a number of days, and it depends on the type of analysis that's being performed. Backing up a little bit, Jeff's presentation was particularly informative with regard to examples in Olympic sport where athletes with even an 8-hour blackout period of testing were able to exploit that for a competitive advantage. And in that regard, a comprehensive year-round anti-doping program cannot have any blackout dates because we've seen and heard from experience that athletes can use those periods, even in with a few hours of blackout period, to exploit the anti-doping program, undermine it, and use performance-enhancing drugs to defraud their competitors and to win essentially by cheating means. So appreciating that and knowing that there can't be any blackout dates, I think one of our key goals is to give the athletes as much confidence as they can possibly have that they are stepping into the ring or into the octagon and they will be facing an opponent that is clean. Unfortunately, because there are no blackout dates and because the turnaround time of results takes a number of days, as Bob had said, 10 days, and then if you're adding special analysis on that, that can even increase that for a few days further. And that's reserved to negative results, as Onye said as well. We will come up close to events, as we do on the Olympic side with athletes going to Rio, and we're testing athletes this week going into Rio, or into a main event boxing match or a UFC fight card, and because of there is no blackout dates in the program, so that athletes cannot exploit any loopholes, there are going to be instances where results are reported one day before the fight, the day of the fight, one day after the fight, and anything kind of outside of those parameters as well. Because the other thing I will mention too is using a WADA accredited lab to maintain the integrity of the process. Samples are analyzed anonymous to the identity of the athlete. And so we can request expedited analysis on those types of samples and things like that. But we're doing roughly 10,000 tests a year across all sports, including boxing and the UFC, but all of the Olympic sports, as well as motocross and the other clients that we work with. And we aren't the only client that the lab has. They have multiple other clients that also vie for results as fast as possible. Because the lab doesn't know who the athlete belongs to, the sample belongs to, they're able to analyze those samples with complete impartiality to the athlete's identity. And they then report those anonymous results back to USADA so that we can marry those test results with the test and then report those out to the respective parties that need to know that information. And so all that being said is that there's a process in place that does take time in order for the sample collection and analysis process, results management process, to have the utmost integrity for the main goal of safeguarding the health and safety of the fighters.
Just to piggyback on what Bob said, when you can, I know just as well as anybody in here, you can't always do it. I'll call the lab and say they need it.
3 weeks out. Check the box. Expedite. That's helpful. Now, look, I mean, you guys took out John Jones 3 days before the fight. I mean, that's the biggest fight in the world at the time. But, you know, you can expedite when you can. I think that's helpful not just for us. It's helpful for us, but it's helpful for the promoter because they're able to place fight.
No.
You ask for a comment for improvement, I think that's helpful.
No, we appreciate that for sure, and particularly in this sport and where you guys are working as well. You know, as you've probably heard over and over again, I've said it multiple times. This is a lot different than knocking a ball over a fence or running faster than somebody else. Our ideal goal would be that the athletes know that they're competing on a fair and level playing field, because in the reality of this game that you guys oversee, if that doesn't happen, somebody could die. And so part of our service in that regard will be to try and get you results as fast as possible and wherever possible in advance of competitions. Yes, sir.
You ever do the same day testing? In other words, just checking for certain drugs like we do. We just do like the same night if something shows up downstate in the lab. You ever do that?
No, I don't.
Urine test, stick it, something shows up, seal it, take it to the lab.
Yeah, no, we don't do that. It's when we're collecting a sample, it's required to be analyzed for the full scope of what's on the water prohibited list. Just wondering if anyone else has any questions. Yes, sir.
Do you have cooperation from other major promotions so that if somebody tests positive, you don't just say, okay, well, I'm out of the UFC, I'll go fight for Bellator?
You guys want
Yeah, so the rules is from our standpoint are, I mean, from a UFC program, we have jurisdiction over UFC fighters that are on our contract, obviously with the UFC. If the UFC makes a decision to relieve them from their contract, they have the ability to go, you know, fight for another promotion. But my understanding is that a lot of the commissions here that we're working with will likely recognize a suspension issued by USADA, which would likely prevent them from getting a license in another state.
No. They won't recognize a USADA suspension, but they'll close their own, which may be the same.
Sure, that's
Right.
basically what I'm saying.
It's a great point. I mean, I would hope that not only the commissions but the public would put some pressure on an organization that would license a sanctioned fighter to compete. Yeah, Cristiano.
Just to complement what he said about USADA, we have adopted USADA's policy to ours, which is it couldn't have been better. It's like teaching a white belt, teaching a black belt how to do an arm bar. That doesn't happen. And because of USADA in Brazil, not only UFC, we're testing every single event that we do, and we do close to 25 a year.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And, in working through that question with you before, and looking at other sports, it depends. I mean, different sports treat that exact situation differently. And so, it's not our place, I would say. It's not USADA's place to say, hey, here's how the commission has to act when a scenario like this comes up. Oh, you're good.
Individual sport, judo, the number one is the gold medalist test positive. You will lose the gold medal and the automatic goes to the
Yeah, everyone's elevated.
silver medalist.
Yeah, and it's a different scenario. And so, I think it's up to the commissions to the various promotions to actually decide what works best for them when addressing those types of situations. And, we recognize that there might be commissions that look at that issue and arrive at different places, or promotions that look at that question and arrive at different places, and that's fine. I mean, that's not our expertise, is deciding. Do I have it? I think it's probably going to be specific to each organization, but along those lines, as you know, I'm happy to be involved in those conversations and provide the perspective of, well, if you look at other sports, here's how they deal with that, and provide my assistance in that way. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to those promotions to decide. But certainly happy to provide any sort of assistance that we can. Hey, Greg.
I have a couple of concerns. Even when we left, I love what they do. This is top-notch stuff. The problem, I have two issues. One, when you get a positive drug test, obviously, and I'm just talking when you're dealing with boxing commissions, you can never go out in front of the commission. That's a given. The commission says a positive has occurred. It can't be USADA says a positive has occurred. It must be the commission first. And the commission is the only one that can penalize that individual fighter. Only the commission. What gets me a little worried sometimes is under your guidelines, when you're dealing with the Olympics, you can penalize. You have that authority. I deal with that stuff. But when you come into this room, you don't have that authority. The federal law states specifically on a drug test must be a commission, right in the federal law. So when a drug test comes up and it's positive, and we're using them, and I would use these guys, you'd have to come to the commission first, say there's a positive test, and then be done. That'd be the extent of what you can do. The commission then holds the hearing, just if he's going to be penalized, how much the fine is, what the suspension is. That's the commission's role. And we can't have there being a competition there, because if they put the commission, there's some commissions that have to hold a hearing, and it may be only 6 months. That's the max. It may be only $1,000 fine. That's the max. It's a new rule. They can't help it. And it makes us look bad if USADA would say, well, it should be a year, and the fine should be $5,000 or $50,000. That makes a commission look horrible. And the other question is, how many states and tribes do not have drug testing in their regulation? Don't have. That also gets us a little issue. And the other one is one we talked about before. I think if these commissions got together and everybody, not everybody, but a large majority said, we're using USADA or we're using bonds, and we gave you volume. We gave you thousands upon thousands of drug tests. Would you cut your prices so that we can go to our smaller promoters and say, it's not 1,500, it's 100? That's what we need. I know that's what I need. Every state has their own. I work with somebody, Jersey works with somebody, and we're all scattered. If we got together and gave a commission, a drug testing company volume, I would hope they'd lower that price, and we all could use them. We all could use them, and it could be economical for us.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's fantastic feedback. I guess tackle the second or the last question first, which is, you know, whether we would be able to provide testing services to commissions. And I guess at this point, I'm not really prepared to say one way or the other whether that's something that we could do, but certainly are happy to have that conversation. And if we're not able to fill that role, then we're certainly happy to assist in consulting so that the commissions can find an organization that could do that and that would meet the commission's needs. Happy to do that. On the point of, you know, commissions being first with receiving information, and also commissions being the only ones to penalize. You know, again, we certainly appreciate the feedback on the timing of when this information is shared. We certainly have an obligation to our clients to make them aware of information, and they want to get that information as soon as possible. But so right now, we try to provide that information close in time to one another. But you know, certainly appreciate that comment, and we'll take it under we'll take it into consideration moving forward if we get the sense that that's what the commissions want. I don't think that that's something that would be too difficult to accomplish. And then the point that only commissioners or only commissions can penalize. I think we're certainly sensitive to the fact that commissions have a job. There are rules that they must follow with respect to governing the sport in their jurisdiction, and a violation. There might be limits on what kind of a sanction they can impose for an anti-doping rule violation. And we understand that what Pennsylvania might be able to do is different than what Nevada can do. Different than what's under the UFC policy. And it's something that we've given a lot of thought to, and basically the way that we operate right now is if we get a positive test, these athletes, because they have agreed to abide by the UFC anti-doping policy, or well, it's pretty much just in the UFC anti-doping policy, at least right now or recently, then it's very clear that we would say that we have jurisdiction over that with respect to their participation in the UFC. Now, that doesn't necessarily extend to everything else. But at the same time, if this is a positive test that's in connection with an event that's being held in a certain jurisdiction, then we'll share that information with that jurisdiction so that they can take appropriate steps under their rules to hold that athlete accountable. And we will be in contact with that jurisdiction so that they know, hey, here's what our rules say. Here's where we think that this case might fall out. Sometimes there's some overlap there. We've seen that in Nevada, where there was overlap with where we both had an athlete who tested positive at an event, I want to say on January 2nd, and our sanctions came out and they were almost identical. I mean, I think there was maybe a month off, and that was because we were communicating with them and saying, hey, here's where it falls on our scale. They said, hey, here's where it falls on ours, and we saw there was some common ground there. And so I don't think it's a situation where we could just say we're going to completely abdicate responsibility, but we certainly are not going to stand in the way of the commission taking the appropriate steps that they need to in order to hold that athlete accountable. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, just for everybody's information, as regulators, we don't regulate USADA. We regulate the promoter. So I have an excellent relationship with Jeff. So our agreement is when a fighter, Jeff Vitzky, from the UFC, when one of the fighters tests positive, that test goes to the UFC and it should come to me simultaneously. Then we have a standard
Yeah, and I believe our time is up, at least at the podium. But we'll be here. We'll be here for at least another few hours. So find us. We'll be walking around and happy to provide any assistance.